Most people think the problem is their thoughts. They try to think more positively. They repeat affirmations. They try to stay focused on what they want. And yet, nothing really changes. The results stay the same. The patterns repeat. The frustration grows. So they come to a conclusion that quietly destroys their progress. Maybe this doesn't work. But what you have to understand is, the problem is not that it doesn't work. The problem is that you've been trying to change your life from the wrong level. And if you don't see this clearly, you can spend years doing everything right and still feel stuck. Think about your own experience for a moment. You've had days where you felt motivated, clear, focused, even certain about what you wanted. In those moments, your thinking changed. But then something happened, a few hours later, or maybe the next day. That clarity faded. You went back to familiar thoughts, familiar emotions, familiar reactions, and without realizing it, you returned to the same results. Now stay with me here. This is not a lack of discipline. This is not a lack of intelligence. And it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's because there is something deeper controlling the entire process, something most people never truly see. The truth is, your life is not being created by your conscious thoughts. It's being controlled by a structure beneath them. A structure that was built long before you were aware of it. This is where everything changes. When you were very young, your mind was completely open. You weren't analyzing, you weren't questioning, you were absorbing. Everything around you went in. The way people spoke, the way they reacted to money, the way they handled stress, the way they saw themselves, all of it became stored. And over time it formed a pattern, not a single belief, but a system of habits. A system of automatic thinking, a system that now runs in the background of your life. This is what controls your results. Most people try to change their life by changing what they think in the moment. But the moment is not where the control is. The control is in what feels natural to you, what feels familiar, what feels normal. Because that is what you return to, automatically. Think about it. You can decide to think differently. You can tell yourself, I'm going to be successful. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to become something more. And for a moment it feels real, but then something happens. You try to act on it. You try to step into that version of yourself. And suddenly, there's resistance, discomfort, doubt. A quiet pull back to what you already know. Let that sink in. That resistance is not random. It is the system trying to keep you consistent with who you've been. Because your mind is not designed to create change. It is designed to maintain what is familiar, even if what is familiar is limiting. This is why people stay in the same financial situation for years. This is why patterns in relationships repeat. This is why someone can know exactly what to do and still not do it. Because knowing is not the issue, the internal program is. Now here's where it becomes very clear. Your thoughts create a certain internal state. That state creates a certain frequency. And that frequency determines what you attract. Not in a mystical sense, but in a very real, observable way. You notice certain opportunities. You respond in certain ways. You connect with certain people. All of it matches the state you are consistently in. Think about a radio. It can receive thousands of signals, but it only plays one. Why? Because it is tuned to a specific frequency. Your mind works the same way. You are constantly surrounded by possibilities. But you only experience the ones that match your internal setting. Now here's the part most people don't want to accept. Changing your thoughts occasionally does not change your frequency, because your frequency is not based on what you think once. It's based on what you return to, over and over again. And what you return to is your internal program. So if you've been trying to think positive, but your results haven't changed, it's not because you're failing. It's because you're trying to override something that is stronger than a single thought. Now stay with me here. This is not bad news. This is clarity. Because once you see this, you stop fighting the wrong battle. You stop trying to force change from the surface. And you begin to understand where real change actually happens. Not in the moment you say something new, but in the repetition of a new internal experience. This is where most people quit, because it feels uncomfortable. It feels unnatural. It feels like you're pretending. And that discomfort is the signal that you're moving beyond the current program. The truth is, growth does not feel natural at first, because your system is built on the past, and anything new feels like a threat to that stability. But here's what changes everything. If you continue, if you persist through that discomfort, if you allow yourself to stay with a new way of thinking and feeling, something begins to shift, not immediately, but gradually. What once felt unnatural becomes familiar. What once felt forced becomes automatic. And when that happens, your behavior changes, your decisions change, your reactions change, and as a result, your outcomes change. Not because you tried harder, but because you became different. This is the part most people miss. They focus on doing, but doing is always a reflection of being, and being is shaped by what has been repeated internally. So the question is not, what should I do to change my life? The question is, what am I repeatedly reinforcing within myself? Because whatever you reinforce becomes your baseline, and your baseline becomes your reality. Now think about your life again, not from what you want, but from what you've been repeating. The thoughts you return to, the emotions you live in, the way you see yourself. That is what has been creating your results. Not occasionally, but consistently. And once you see this clearly, you stop blaming circumstances. You stop waiting for something external to change. You begin to understand your position in the process. You are not reacting to life. You are participating in its creation through what you repeatedly think and feel and accept as true. This is where your power actually is, not in forcing outcomes, but in becoming aware of what you are continuously feeding. And here's something you need to remember. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are not lacking ability. You have simply been operating from a program you didn't consciously choose, but now you can see it. And once you see it, you can begin to change it. Not instantly, but intentionally. And that changes everything. So instead of trying to control every thought, start paying attention to patterns. Instead of chasing results, start observing what feels normal to you. Because that is where your current reality is coming from. And if you want something different, you have to allow yourself to become familiar with something new, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is not a sign to stop. It's a sign that something deeper is shifting. And if you stay with that process, or if you continue to move in that direction, you will not just think differently, you will become someone who naturally lives differently. And when that happens, you don't need to force outcomes anymore. They begin to reflect who you are. This is not about trying harder, it's about understanding deeper. And once you understand this, you stop asking, why isn't this working? And you start asking, what am I reinforcing every day? Because the answer to that question is already shaping your future. If this way of thinking made something click for you, stay with it. There's more to understand and more to see clearly. Subscribe to the channel if you want to keep building this level of awareness. And watch the next video, where we go deeper into how to actually shift the internal program that's been controlling your results. Now think about this one more time. You don't get what you want. You don't get what you think once. You get what you repeatedly are. And that is where your real work begins. And if you're ready to go deeper, watch the next video. There's a connection waiting for you there.